a viable alternative. We just know that that is a system out there. It has a well and it has a storage tank, but we really don't know that that's going to be a viable alternative to the water issue in Port Royal.
The system out there with another well on there could handle 333 equivalent residential connections.
But another well.
Sir?
The well,
Another
Port
well.
Royal's well.
The current well that Port Royal has with the current well that's there, that system would be able to handle 333 equivalent residential connections with a simple main interconnection. Rates are going to have to be studied to determine, how is that system going to be able to maintain itself. Of course, with the aging system in Port Royal, the rates are going to have to be able to maintain that current system. So, it is a feasible option. It all comes down to money and how much is it going to cost. And without doing a full analysis and spending that time doing that, to give you an idea what rates are going to be, it's hard to speculate at this time.
And I'm not blaming you because I know you didn't do it, but I would have thought that when we came with part of a resolution, we would have had the total answer to what is being asked. Number one, we say that, hey, this is a solution, but I don't know that it is a real solution. The cost may be prohibitive to maybe more than what preparing the system in Port Royal. I would have thought we would have come with an entire package rather than just piecemeal it and we having to go back and get additional information. Nope.
No, I understand.
I understand. That's all I want. Thank you.
Mr. Cully's saying we needed a preliminary engineering report to get those actual details.
And we should have started this process some time ago so we could have had all of that completed prior to the last meeting of the public hearing. That's all I'm saying. If that was going to be one of the options, we should have known what that option was going to mean.
I think maybe it was an option discovered late in the whole process.
At the very last minute. We were finding ways not to approve it, so we found an option that made.
No.
Okay.
No, we weren't finding ways. So the reality is we're looking at all options.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Long.
Oh, you have more. Okay.
I have one more question, please. I am curious as I look at the maps, you did not go east to pick up any boundary adjustments.
Well, that large section of land, remember, is the wildlife refuge. That's federally owned property, so neither you or I can touch that.
No,
East on 17.
East on 17, and that's what you're talking about,
You're
right?
talking about the two, the Port Royal Landing and
The subdivisions on Port Royal going back toward the Essex County line. I know you didn't go in that direction.
We did have a meeting and invited the citizens that live in that area to come and look at a map and talk to us, trying to avoid conflict and make this a smooth issue for everyone. Right. We presented them with this and said, if you would like to be part of the town, you are welcome. If not, that's fine. We recommend you have a meeting. We'll be glad to come, talk to you. You let us know what you want to do. No one ever called for a meeting. I had one person call me and say, I have talked to people. We're going to have a meeting on such and such a date. Can you open the town hall? I said, I can open it and I can be there. And this one lady and I sat there for an hour. And I said, I don't think anybody's coming. I don't think they want to be part of the town at this time. Of course, they can always petition later. That is allowed with a boundary adjustment. But they did not seem to be interested, and we did not want to force the issue. So that is why. And I understand one person was concerned about the water because she lives in the landing, and we've got a brand new water system. If you're going to get in a new water system, our rates might go up. I mean, they had concerns, and so we just were not going to push them on it. And of course, it's residential, and would bring us, no businesses. So,
okay. What is to say? And I understand that it is not ideal, and I understand that it is not ideal to sort of split across property lines. But I can assure you, it was done with the town of Bowling Green. If you look at the boundary lines of Bowling Green.
No, we went around property lines.
That's what I'm saying. We went around properties to satisfy people. So my question is, and I've had this question before at the last meeting, I did have a concern as to why we were asking for so much farmland in the town of Port Royal, the farmland is going to way outnumber the property that will be developed for the most part. And I do have a concern with that, to be quite honest. And you sent me, sent all of us a letter, and you explained what the reason was, but I still think that there may be some way that we can work together.
Well, as I said, when we started out with this idea, we started out with a third of the Holloway Robinson field and all of the Carpenter field, but because of trying to avoid splitting lands, it was recommended that we go ahead and just keep everything in, but adopt the agricultural zone so that nothing would change for the farmers until such a time as they had someone come to them and say, we want to buy 20 acres or we want to buy 50 acres, and then they could approach the town for rezoning for future growth. And that was the recommendation that the Planning Commission made, and because we want to have an agreeable boundary line adjustment, we went with the county's recommendation, and we're, standing by your Planning Commission on that.
I understand. Thank you, Mrs. Long. Let me say one thing. I apologize for a few minutes ago because I used the wrong words. I did not mean that we were trying to find a way of denying it.
No problem.
And so I misspoke, and I used the wrong choice of words, and I apologize.
You want to finish saying you apologize so we can get that on tape later on?
I apologize, all I apologize.
Okay.
You get it one time, and that's it.
Thank you. We're going to go to Mr. Fincham. Mrs. Long, thank you, Mrs. Long. Mrs. Long has referenced more than once that the Planning Commission went along with this, or the Planning Commission recommended that.
I believe it was actually a meeting of staff involving Mr. Cully, myself, Mr. Taylor, and representatives of the town. So the Planning Commission has not formally reviewed this request.
So this is not...
That's correct.
Yeah. So you would be the planning director.
Yes, sir.
Director of Planning is actually your title, but...
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because I was wondering if the Planning Commission had sanctioned it one way or another. Mr. Taylor, I want to let you go. I need a break like a dog. You want me to break while you want me to just go while you talk? I mean, you already talked to me. Okay. Mr. Taylor's going to ask his questions, and I know he's going to take 5 minutes. I'll be right back because I'm...
Okay. I don't have questions as much as I have comments. Well, I got, okay. If you need a break, we can take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back, if that's what you need.
Is your statement going to be longer than 5 minutes?
Probably.
All right. We're going to take a quick 5-minute breaks for those of us who are over 50. Board members had asked questions. It's Mr. Taylor's turn. So, Mr. Taylor?
Okay. I do have a question, and I guess for the legal team.
Turn your mic on.
Are we able to change any of the boundary lines and still vote on this tonight? Or if we change the boundary lines, we would then have to have another public hearing? How does that work?
You would likely have to have a re-advertise.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a question I have. Okay. The other thing that I would say is that I am unequivocally in favor of the boundary adjustment. I've always said that, and I believe it is good for the town, and I believe that the town will not be able to progress successfully unless that boundary adjustment is given. When I think about Port Royal, first of all, I think in terms of its geographic location in comparison to the rest of the county. And there's always been this situation where many of the residents have not felt a part of the county because they're so far away. And so many of the things that we've done tend not to affect them. You know, many of the ideas that we have, many of the funding, many of the things that we've funded throughout other parts of the county seem to not affect them because of the distance that they are away. And they've come to a point now where they need revenue in order to provide the services that they provide, whether we're talking about water or street lights, or whether we're talking about sidewalks or whatever it is. They need assistance in doing that. And they're asking for the assistance through the tax dollars that they generate in their own community. These dollars that we're talking about, this $70,000 or $60,000 or whatever it is, for the most part, is generated right in the area of Port Royal. They're not asking to go to the western part of the county or to some other area of the county and have them donate funds for their cause. These funds are generated in their community. Of the people who I've heard speak tonight, I would say 99% of those people have said they were in favor of the boundary adjustment. Some people have issues about whether it's farmland or where the boundary will be, but 99% of the people said this boundary adjustment is what we need, and this is what we want, and this is what it's going to take in order for our community to grow and prosper. So I don't understand why we would not do what we can to try and support the needs of 99% of the people who represent a community. We also talk about the fact that we're losing funds, and we talk about the amount of funds that might be generated and how the county will not have benefit of those funds. I just don't see it that way. Every dollar that's spent in Port Royal, just like in Carmel Church and Ladysmith and Woodford, benefits Caroline County. And that's a part of Caroline County as well. So I don't feel there is any loss financially. The water system is just one aspect of what is needed to make the town viable. So even if we found a way, and I don't think we're going to do it with this, to be perfectly honest, but if we found a way to deal with the water system, I don't think that's going to suffice what's needed in order to provide the financial need that Port Royal has. They are a town, they are a historical town, they want to remain a town, and in order to do that, they have to have the funds necessary to provide the services for their citizens. They aren't any different from any other citizen in Caroline County. And citizens in Caroline County come here all the time, asking for our assistance. And I've been here 18 years, and I haven't seen us turn anyone away yet. And I don't think we ought to start tonight. Okay, I'm still not finished. I think the final thing that I would say is that the majority of the opposition to this particular document comes from, I'm sorry, individuals who don't live there. the people who live in the town of Port Royal and in the surrounding area of Port Royal that are going to be affected by this document are the ones who are asking to do it. So again, I'm not saying everybody, but a great majority of the people who support this document are the ones who live in and around the area of Port Royal and are going to be affected by this change. And if this boundary adjustment does not happen now, it will be a long time before it happens again.
Sir,
It's
you're
my
out
time,
of order.
sir.
You're out of order. You're out of order, though, but we'll give you opportunity to talk probably privately. Mr. Taylor's going to summarize right now. Are you finished?
Again, I just believe that it's something we can do, and if we do have to adjust some boundary lines, we can do that and find, and it will be pleasing with the town council, and they can be able to achieve the goal that they're after, then I'm all for that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. My question or questions were similar to what I think Mrs. Watson asked. And if we give this boundary adjustment just as it is, and the town is unable to get a grant to fix the water system, what do we do then? Does the town give the county their water system and say, sorry, it didn't work? And I think that's something we need to work out while sitting with town council. So we really don't know. You don't know. We all want to hope that you're going to get, we hope you would have got a grant last go round. We hope you'll get a grant next go round. But I'm famous for saying hope is not a strategy, so we have to kind of put together a strategy and work it through. The other thing, I don't know if Mr. Morse is still here from Horns, but what happens if Horns goes bankrupt or Horns closes, and then that's the big deal of a lot of revenue? What do we do then? You know, I've said, and I really do want to help Port Royal. I just may have a different way of helping Port Royal than what's on the table, and I think when we sit down together, we can do that. But if you took the expense of the water system out of Port Royal, all of the revenue you generate now could be fixing street lights, fixing sidewalks. That's not enough to fix the sidewalks and streets? Okay. Well, that's what we'll have to sit down and talk about. But anyhow, that was my question. The big one is, what do we do in the worst case scenario? And we honestly have to sit down and figure out what that worst case scenario is. Mr. Seeley talked about revenue sharing. Revenue sharing is more of a, I want to say, gentleman's agreement, but in all deference to Madam Mayor, it's a gentleperson's agreement, we'll put it that way. We can't legally say you're going to give us X amount of dollars based on what happens. There's no way to enforce it. I trust you guys. I know where you live. So, you know, we could kind of work it out that way, but I think there's a lot more discussion. There may be some land, especially the farmland, that we try to change. And I think that's where we come in. The last thing is, not counting the people on Port Royal, Town Council, I think it was 6-5 that spoke against. And the ones that spoke against, which is probably Mr. Booker, who wanted to get up, he owns farmland there.
He didn't speak against it.
But you can't talk anymore. You had your last chance.
He didn't speak against it.
What do we want to do next? What's your next course of action, Mr. Taylor?
Okay. What my next course of action is, I will wait until the 8th to vote on this, and what I will do is give the board time to, Mr. Black said he had another issue that he would like to talk about, and certainly Mr. Thomas and Mr. Underwood. So since they have issues, I will wait until the 8th for the actual vote, because I said in the last meeting I asked board members, I said, if you have concerns or questions, there is still time. Let me know. I will contact anybody on the town council. We'll meet, we'll talk. Not hearing anything from anyone, I was under the impression that everybody had the information that they needed to make the decision. Obviously, that wasn't the case. So I will not push a vote tonight. We will, during this time between now and the 8th, meet with members of the town council and those board members.
No, we need to have a board to council meeting, full board, not one-on-one, so we can all decide what the issues are.
We can do that. Pick a date.
We'll schedule it with the...
If that's okay with the town council.
Mr. Chairman,
Not just yet.
I have a question for the attorney. Can we legally enter into a revenue sharing agreement?
The answer is revenue sharing agreements are available as a separate agreement, and they're subject to different criteria, but I mean, they could certainly be considered as a part of this process. You know, the
Do they
revenue
need
sharing.
to be in the motion that goes with the boundary line adjustment, or is that separate?
Well, it would be a separate agreement, and so a revenue sharing agreement would need to be, you know, it's subject to its own public hearing requirements and most importantly, approval by the Commission on Local Government.
And that's my very thing.
It can be incorporated potentially as part of this process, but, I mean, it couldn't be done so that this could be voted on, that it couldn't be finalized in order to be voted on the 8th, which is what I'm hearing, you know, but if there were a way that...
I think there's... Well, and the other issue is if we can only vote on the 8th on exactly what the town council presented us. If we make a change, we have to basically have another public hearing. That's why I said we should meet with the town, sit down and say, knock down, drag out, fight, whatever it is, and say, this is what we actually do agree to.
Okay. I guess my concern was just what you said. One of the reasons we looked at the boundary adjustment was because it was more of a clean-cut agreement between the two organizations.
Well,
If we bring the Commission of Local Government involved in this, that changes the whole scenario, because then the Commission on Local Government has to agree.
No,
if they,
it's not an annexation.
well, it's not an annexation, but the Commission on Local Government has to agree with whatever it is, conditions,
That would be the revenue sharing, which she
Right.
said we could do the revenue sharing as a separate agreement.
But again, the Commission on Local Government
But they'd
would
have
have to agree to that. And if they did not,
But they have nothing to agree on. What we would be agreeing, and there is, to make sure everybody understands, and I think the town understands because I've said this to them before, the town has no right to annex because they do not provide services into the county. If you provided services in the county, you could say, just like Bowling Green did, I've got a little experience, you could say, we provide services, therefore we want this piece, that would be an annexation. What we're doing to make it easier and simpler is we agree to a boundary adjustment, cuts out the Commission on Local Government for the most part, it sails right through. It's basically easy, and theoretically we could say there is a revenue sharing agreement that we're going to make separate. I don't think you can either, Jim, but that's another story. But we could say there's a revenue sharing agreement that goes to the Commission on Local Government, but you already would have a boundary adjustment theoretically, and you could start applying for grants to fix the water system theoretically. That's the fastest way, and we're still not going to be able to do that on the 8th because we have to sit down with them and say, this is what we finally agree to. And we have our own issues about what to do next and what to do. That's what I tried to say before. We have to sit down full board to town council and say, okay, take this farmland piece out, add this piece. No, we've got to have that piece. We need to do that. And once we do that, If it passes the majority of the board, you can go ahead full steam. But that's what we have to do next. So that would really be between now and the 8th, which is 2 weeks, we can meet with them. I'll make myself available, the rest of the board can, and then we go from there. If we change anything, we have to have another public hearing, but we could take action right after that public hearing because we would theoretically have agreed on all the lines.
Okay.
So what do you want to do next?
I have no problem if board members are legitimately willing to sit down and listen. If you know you're not going to support it, it's no point in using time and energy and effort to say no. But if board members are seriously thinking about or looking at ways that we can make this work through the boundary adjustment, then certainly that's what I want as well. That's what we all want. So
give us a date to try to get together with town council, but sometime before October 8th, and let staff just work through it with town council. Is that? Yeah, because we need to at least do some action. Go ahead.
Is the town of the town of Port Royal at least willing to enter into some sort of economic agreement with the county? I mean, is there a consensus that we could do that?
Yeah, let me.
I mean, if you get the boundary line
within the context of the boundary agreement by mutual agreement, and we are not attorneys, but our understanding and our conversations with the folks in Richmond who are attorneys is that that particular process must be simply a matter of picking up the boundary line and moving it. Right. There can't be any side agreements, or it complicates the process and it moves it into a far slower, more involved to the county-owned local government and so forth and so forth. So I think the answer is on what we're hoping to do, simple, not moving with anybody beyond Caroline County. I believe the answer is no. And may I also say we really appreciate Mr. Taylor's trying to expedite this, but it's most important we do it right.
Yeah.
And if that takes a little longer, I think the town would be happy with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I heard what he said. I think you did too. Do we have the ability to meet with the town council sometime within the next 2 weeks or maybe after the 8th, because we've still got to advertise a public hearing if we change anything. And as Mr. Heimbach said, we do want to do it right if we do it. So would the board members like to try to have staff work with town council and our schedules to see if we can have a joint meeting or meeting earlier at our next board meeting or something like that? Yes, no? Mr. Seeley, what do you think? I just caught you because you were talking.
That's fine. And let me just say that I live in a town, I lived through annexation,
Right.
so to speak, because it was.
That was an annexation.
And let me just, since you put me on the spot, I'm going to say some things that I said to one landowner, and I'm going to say
Well, no,
all of them. No,
we're
because
done
this
with
is
it.
fair.
When are we going to meet? Because Calvin's already given the
But
process.
the question is, you know, we can keep meeting, we can keep moving this line back and forth. There has to be a definitive boundary.
Right.
And the only definitive boundary is the property line that's on the back of these three pieces of property. That's the definitive boundary.
Well, I mean, I too have experience with annexation and with Bowling Green. Trust me, I was close enough to know how they moved around
But they
certain
were
properties.
surveyed boundary lines.
They were property lines. They were property
These are
lines.
property, we're dealing with property lines on this diagram.
That's what
These
we
are
used in
the
Bowling
property
Green.
lines.
That's what we used in Bowling Green.
But now we're talking about not using, if we take these pieces out, we're not using property lines anymore.
If you take all the farmland out, what would be in front would be a property line, right?
But then the minute that a business wants to get bigger, they've got to annex into the town.
And all of that is right, but all of that is not what we need to discuss right now. What we need to discuss right now is when we can meet with the town of Port Royal to talk about moving this line, moving that line. That's what we need to talk about. Anything else is irrelevant. So can we meet with them before the 8th?
I can meet with them before the 8th, but the property owners that are here that own the agricultural land, when somebody comes and wants to buy .8 acres for $12,000 and it's not in the town, they won't be able to do that, because it'll have to be then moved.
But that's
They
what
can't,
Jeff,
You can't even see into the future, so you can't make that statement.
Right.
We're dealing with what is before us.
We have to-
What's before us are property lines. We need to determine.
And your conversation just now, and your discussion, is exactly what we need to sit down with the town of Port Royal and say. Because I've had repeated conversations with Mr. Holloway.
so have I.
Repeated. And he has
have as
insisted,
well.
and he's insisted that his property not be in the town. Okay? If we take that and say, guys and ladies, we think Mr. Holloway's property should be out of the town. We sit with them and we say, yes, no, maybe so, whatever the answer is, I really don't care right now, that's the answer. And we march forward from there. Any other hypothetical, theoretical discussion we're having is you're wasting my heartbeats. We need to just sit down with the town of Port Royal and go from there. When can we meet with the town of Port Royal?
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
I sure hope it's about when we can meet.
It is when we can meet. My thoughts are we can meet if we have something important to talk about. Now, if we're saying that boundaries cannot be crossed and cannot be split and cannot be done those things too, Mr. Fincham, if we're saying that, then my suggestion is we vote tonight and see how it falls, because there's nothing to talk about. I believe all the discussion needs to be, the water issue, to me, is just not there, okay? But if we're going to talk about boundaries and try to negotiate some boundary adjustments, then I'm fine, let's meet. But if that is not on the table, let's vote tonight, because there's nothing else to talk about. Yeah, right. Can he answer that question,
Who?
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Fincham, as to...
Yeah, we didn't split
Mrs.
properties before. Or maybe they'll offer a right of way.
Mr. Akers, you can split property.
We have something to talk about, so let's meet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I say one more thing?
No, we're going to meet now. We're going to meet or not meet, and
Let's
I'm
pick a
trying
date,
to-
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
pick a date.
Pick
The
a date.
7th of October.
The 7th is a Monday.
Maybe 6th, give me here Monday, Tuesday.
7th is a Monday.
Tuesday?
How long do you think we'll take to say yes, no, maybe so?
Well,
The
we
8th is
asked
the
if-
8th, that's what I'm asking him. The 8th is our board meeting day. If we did a 4:30 to 6, is,
That'd be good.
I could do that.
That'd be good.
You can get on the ground till 4:30.
you get on the ground at 4:30 in Baltimore? Oh, you won't be here till 6:30.
You won't be able to have my time.
Now, if you're in Baltimore, you won't be here by,
No, man, you can go around, you can go down 301, or down 3, or take the service road. I did an hour and a half one day. Does that kind
Okay, but
of, that's not going to work for you, though?
No.
The 15th?
What about the 9th?
The 9th is fine.
That's after the board meeting.
Well,
But we would have to do another public hearing if we move
Well,
along
that's
anyhow,
true.
so
It won't
doesn't
matter.
The 9th, which is Wednesday.
Would that give us enough time for the next, and when is our board meeting in November? Is it
The 8th and the
Thursday?
24th, it's going to be Thursday in November,
So that
yes.
would give us the 2 weeks that we needed. to
Right.
meet.
to advertise.
We would have 10 days to advertise for our November meeting. So we would meet the 9th, 6 o'clock here. That would be good for us because we could just adjourn to the 9th. Okay? All right, we're going to meet with the town to discuss boundary lines. Actually, we're going to take all the input from the public hearing today into our boundary line adjustments. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to conclude agenda item number 4.
Sorry, can I ask you to repeat? It's 6 o'clock?
We're going to meet 6 o'clock here, Wednesday the 9th. We will more than likely meet in the EOC, one of the conference rooms. It makes our adjournment easier because we'll meet on the 8th and we'll just adjourn to the 9th. We won't have to make a special advertisement too. All right, we are so done. All right, is there anyone here who wants to talk about public hearing number 5, which is special exception Bowserman? Is there anyone who'd like to talk about that? All right, I'm going to move that one down. Thank you, folks from Port Royal. If you'd like to leave now, that's fine. All right, I'm going to switch items. Agenda item number 6 was canceled.
Yep.
That was the one in the Reedy Church District. I'm going to switch 5 and 7, and we're going to do number 7 right now. Mr. Fincham, I don't see anybody for the Bowserman one, so that's why I switched.
Mr. Bowsman's back there.
Mr. Bowserman's back
Yeah, there are
there?
a couple people for the.
Oh, I didn't see him.
Yeah, there are
Well,
a couple of people back there.
all right, I'm sorry. I switched them already. Come on, Mr. Fincham. We're doing number 7. We're going to be on the night. Mr. Fincham, agenda item number 7. Ready when you are.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your first public hearing tonight related to zoning matters is RZ 06-2013. Mark Giles, owner and applicant, is requesting a rezoning from B1 Business to M1 Industrial on a portion of tax map 68-A-56 consisting of 1.43 acres more or less. The subject property is at 21,179 Jefferson Davis Highway, which is approximately 1/2 mile south of the Goldensville Road intersection. The purpose of the rezoning is to allow a tow service operation in the M1 zoning district. The 2030 comprehensive plan identifies this property as being located in a rural preservation area with a density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres of land. The applicant is requesting a rezoning on the 1.43 acres from B1 Business to M1 Conditional for the tow service operation. It would also potentially allow, as a special exception use, auto repair establishment, although that is not part of this application. The application as proffered would limit the use of this property to 2 uses, the tow service operation itself and the potential for the special exception, which is more restrictive than uses currently allowed by the B1 zoning district. The Planning Commission did hold its public hearing on this request and forwarded the application to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of denial based on the inconsistency of the application with the comprehensive plan. In your packet, you have the summary of the Planning Commission's action as well as the discussion related to the application. You also have the proffers as tendered by the applicant, which have been signed and notarized for your consideration. You also have the full staff report and the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting where this matter was discussed. And with that, I'll address any questions that the board may have.
Okay. Mr. Fincham, before I open the public hearing or ask questions, there are no changes to the proffers before we open the public hearing, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Mr. Black?
Just a quick question I didn't see on here. Is there a limit about how many vehicles can be stored on the property? And I may have missed it.
I believe there was a limit.
I saw the 30-day limit on storage. I just didn't see anything as far as a limit on number of.
There was no limit on the number of vehicles stored. It would be limited to the fenced-in area immediately behind the structure there. There's a fenced-in area if you're familiar with the site.
I am, yeah.
The inoperable vehicles would have to be stored within that fenced-in area. So the limitation would be the fenced-in area itself. There's no physical number.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Steele, questions for Ms.
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Underwood?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Akers?
Does it say that in the proffers? Does it say at all that the vehicles will be limited to the fenced-in area?
That is the limit of the rezoning, Mr. Akers. And by ordinance, any inoperable vehicles would have to be stored behind the fence.
All right. Now, he has 2 fences over there. One on the side and one sort of back, and there's a trailer, I guess. I'm not sure whether, Mr. Giles, that's for an office or just what that's for there, but there's a trailer setting back. That's an office. And there's a fenced-in area there too, right?
Well, we're going to get to ask him questions.
Okay. But is
It's
that
just a
correct?
staff question. from Mike.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's that fenced-in area.
Where the office is at or beside the building up front?
It has to be behind the building by ordinance. So yes, there's a fenced-in area. As I understand, he's going to have other equipment there as well. We may want to clarify that before we open the public hearing.
I think that's where he's going to store his tow trucks.
So the tow trucks will be stored up front?
Behind
Beside the building? Beside the building?
Beside the building in the fenced area.
Right.
Okay.
Beside the building.
Now,
Still fenced.
looks like there's some, I'm not sure whether it's digging for additional fencing, or I'm not sure what that's for. That is to the west of the current fence that's on the side of the building?
I'm sorry, would you repeat
Yeah, there's a fence to the west of the building, west side of the building.
along the property line?
Probably is along the property line.
I think that's the one that separates Mr. Giles' property from, I forget,
But a little beyond the existing fence, there are piles of dirt, and it looks like it's been digging done there. And I'm just wondering what that's for.
drain,
He's saying drain field.
Drain field.
So
That's drain field.
yes.
Okay.
Good? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fincham. At this time, we will declare the public hearing to be open for RZ 06-2013, Mark A. Giles. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Hearing none, the public hearing is declared closed. Mr. Giles, if you would like to come forward, or Mrs. Giles, in case there are some questions from the board members, we won't have to yell or hear. And Mr. B, again, I apologize, I didn't really see you, so I switched up. All right, if you just take a seat on the front in case they have questions for you. Any questions for the applicant or Mr. Fincham again at this time? Mr. Black, questions? No? Cecilia, questions? Ms. Underwood?
Mr. and Mrs. Giles, how long have you been in business?
The business itself has been in business for since 1982.
Okay.
Prior, his father was running the business, and then he passed away, and then Mark took it over.
Right.
Since 82.
Have you had any issues at all
As
as
far
far as running your business in terms of
No, sir. Mm-mm.
any citations or anything?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions, Mr. Akers?
I do. Mr. Fincham?
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure I understand you correctly. This only gives him the permission for towing. What's a special exception? What does it give him an opportunity to do as far as special exception is concerned?
There used to be an auto repair facility at that location,
Yes.
which was a non-conforming use. It was rendered non-conforming based on ordinance changes by the Board of Supervisors, which moved auto repair to the M1 district as a special exception use. The zoning application, which is before you tonight, the tow service operation would be a by right use in the M1 district. That is the only by right use they are requesting. The rezoning would allow the opportunity to apply for a special use permit for the auto repair establishment. That is the only special use that they are requesting the potential to apply for as part of this rezoning. They have proffered out all other special exception uses.
Let me ask the question, and I want to first of all say to Mr. Giles, you've done a good job in putting the fence up over. It looks extremely nice, and I certainly appreciate that, and it does look good over there at the present. I guess my concern is, and my question has to do with, let's say, for instance, it is approved tonight, the rezoning is approved tonight. I don't think there's been any question among these board members up here, as well as other people, about some of the other lots, towing lots that have been run by Mr. Giles. What happens if that one in